So I don't know whether that's also a sensitive topic, which is strange, or whether now I just have a black mark next to my name because I dared to broach the topic of coronavirus before people were talking about it. So it's strange times, Joelle. Strange times. Over the last month, YouTube has demonetized every single one of my videos. And
including
it started
past
out,
ones or just new ones?
Oh, sorry, just the ones from the past month. So I was writing about coronavirus for a bit, and so they demonetized those. But then I did one about the anti-encryption bill that's being debated at the moment. And then they demonetized that one, and I'm like,
wow.
What? So I don't know whether that's also a sensitive topic, which is strange, or whether now I just have a black mark next to my name because I dared to broach the topic of coronavirus before people were talking about it. So it's strange times, Joelle. Strange times.
That's been crazy because first off, my theory just from hearing that is probably something happened by mentioning coronavirus before its time, which is a crazy thing that now everyone can talk about it. But there was a time when that would get you off, and it was like 3 days. It was like a 3 to 4 day window. If you posted something on that, you were just like talking about chemtrails and lizard people and flat earth and look into it. There's all that stuff off. But now it's like, oh, now it's real ad. Never mind. You can talk about it. But probably what happened is now YouTube just, it doesn't have the bandwidth to go back and review every decision.
See, I just don't understand why that is, because everything they do is on the internet. So why is YouTube losing personnel right now? People surely can work from home at YouTube. They are an entirely online platform. Like, I just don't understand why that would be a hindrance to them.
Yes. Well, to play devil's advocate or Google's advocate, same thing, am I right? But I think that a lot of large corporations still have offices and they still make people come in, and there's still, there's still an adjustment period where they kind of, we got to all work remotely. It's not just, hey, work from remote. It's like, but my computer, I'm not logged in on my home computer, whatever. And then I'm sure there's some disruption, right?
I mean, I'm kind of happy that we've reached this point where companies are being forced to make that transition. Like, I don't like anyone being forced to do anything, but I also see things just getting more decentralized, and that being a good thing as soon as people start working from home. Then people can literally vote with their feet.
Reading my articles, have you? That was one of my big good things to look forward to in the future after the pandemic is over.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. We're going to have some great remote working technology that Silicon Valley is already putting out, great video conferencing technology that's going to get better and better. I just think that a more decentralized world obviously is going to be a better one. And so having companies like Google start to kind of break apart that, well, we're all in the same plate. Like, I mean, I think that could be a good thing. It's very surprising that a company like Google, which is sort of always at the forefront of these techs that for video conferencing and all of that kind of stuff, that they don't have this operational in their facility. Because I'm seeing some smaller companies in Silicon Valley that were just like, oh, we're already basically remote. It's not much of a change for us. But some of the others are having a real hard time adjusting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Google's always been that sort of like, we're the fun workplace, man. You got beanbag chairs, you can take naps.
Everything's so colorful.
And if you write a memo about anything, we get you destroy you right away.
Don't mention the memo.
Yes, so like all that kind of stuff. I think that despite all that, Google is still a giant, and they move slowly, and it's easy to just say, well, it costs such a small percentage of all our revenue to maintain an office, so we don't care about that expense.
It was actually sorry, don't go ahead.
Yeah, and if we can afford to only hire people, because we're Google, where else are you going to work? And so I think it's because of that all the small companies are coming into the new age, the actual agile world, and they don't have to deal with this whole thing.
Yeah, well, I think it was Peter Thiel. I can't remember who said, it was about maybe 6 months ago, how he's talking, I think he was interviewing someone from Google. It was like Eric Schmidt, or I can't remember who, but he was interviewing him and saying like, so you guys have all of this revenue and all this savings. And they're like, yeah. It's like, so what are you doing with it? And he was making the point that unless they're reinvesting that in the company, which they can't at the moment because they have way too much money to be reinvesting fast enough. And he said, like, if you're not reinvesting, then you're no longer a tech company. You're no longer an innovation company. You've become something else, like a financial, like, bondholder, stockholder company. Like, it's just a very different business model if you're not a company that is just constantly innovating and putting that money into development. So that was kind of an interesting point. I'd have to find the video to watch exactly what he said. But, you know, this idea that Google used to really be this cutting edge at the forefront, you know, do no evil company. And they've really spun around to be the antithesis of that these days. And it's like, it's so fascinating. We're in this strange time where everything's kind of become murky around these tech companies, like Facebook as well. Used to be this kind of, you know, very small, like invite only, cool, hip thing. And I mean, Facebook is in this weird territory where they've gotten so much flack for their privacy violations, and we've just fed it information. Like, I remember when I first got my Facebook account and it was like, what videos do you like? And I'm like, oh, I'll just fill in that. And I just give them all my details, not realizing that that's just feeding their data, their profile on me. But at the same time, so much innovation in Silicon Valley comes from Facebook. They are at the forefront of the open source world. They're like so many of the tech companies are just using technology that Facebook has developed and have released open source. And it's incredible. And people don't realize how much on the cutting edge they are. But at the same time, they've had this weird relationship where they're not privacy conscious, and it just had egregious violations. But then they had this weird turnaround at the start of last year where they said, okay, we're pivoting, we're going to become this private company, and because we've listened to you all, whatever that means, and we're going to start encrypting everything. But then the government's turned around and said, no, you're not. You need to give us access to everything. If you don't, we will force you to. And that's kind of led us to this whole anti-encryption ban that we've got going on in the Senate at the moment. So it's just like this, like, what is Facebook right now? Are they this evil company? Are they this cutting edge company? Like, I don't think they know what they are.
Yeah, I think their success has catapulted them into an identity crisis. And it kind of becomes the same thing. I remember some people commenting on the Joe Rogan podcast, just saying that, like, oh, you have a responsibility to this, and you just, you know, you're such a big, is one of the largest media outlets on the planet, is this, like, you know, just jerk off's podcast. Like, that's kind of like the way he presents it, and still wants to be. And he's kind of tried his best to just be that guy, having people he likes to hang out with and smoke weed with on his podcast and just hang out. And he's kind of resisted that. But for everyone else, you start growing. It's like, well, we're big now. We better, like, put some production values on this. Oh, we're big now. We better, like, stop swearing so much, or stop, you know, we're big now. And then all of a sudden you become this thing, and the inertia takes you. Now you're like, now you have a seat at the table. And if you don't go to the table, then people get mad at you. And then once you're at the table, you're kind of along for the ride. And then you're secretly thinking, what happened when I was doing this in my garage again? I kind of want to go back, but I can't, because I can't just, like, let it all go.